A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Ambassador of India to the US, it is my privilege to extend a warm welcome to everyone gathered here today to celebrate Pravasi Bhartiya Divas. This day is a celebration to mark the return to India of one of the greatest Pravasis, Mahatma Gandhi. Following in his footsteps, the over 30 million overseas Indians living across the globe have made their mark in a wide variety of fields and contributed immensely to the societies and countries where they live and have made their homes. The Indian diaspora strive to represent the best of Indian culture, ethos, and values. One is reminded of the immortal Raj Kapoor song, "Mera जूता है जापानी, ये पतलून इंग्लिस्तानी, सर पे लाल टोपी रूसी, फिर भी दिल है हिंदुस्तानी." This day, the Pravasi Bhartiya Divas is a celebration of you all. I now request Ambassador of India to share his thoughts with the gathering on this occasion.
Good evening. First of all, a very happy New Year to all of you. Some of you I've met since New Year, some of you I have not met. A very warm welcome here, the 9th of January, Pravasi Bhartiya Divas. This has become a very important tradition in the last 15 years or so, and it is something which is gaining strength every year and is evolving into not just an emotional and sentimental get-together, but a very focused effort to effectively engage the diaspora and for the diaspora to become engaged in what's happening back home. I think the 9th of January, as you all know, was chosen for the return of Mahatma Gandhi from South Africa in 1915. A return which changed for all time to come the direction of India, the political, social, and economic landscape of India, and the moral standing of India in the entire world. So I think it is not simply a question of somebody who'd work abroad coming back home to do work in India, but the kind of work that Mahatma Gandhi did, the kind of change that he brought, is frankly something on which we all are still riding today. It's clear that overseas Indians, our Pravasis today, are a major force all over the world. They have global strength, political and economic. They have a significant presence in the mainstream of so many important countries in the world. And in many ways, the Pravasi community in the United States is the best example that we can put forward. I think this community has made an amazing name for itself, evidenced most recently by the fact that you have 4 congressmen and women in the US Congress and a senator. But that, I don't think, is the only reflection of this community. I think any corner of the country that you go to, you find this presence. I was amazed. Last night I was in Indianapolis, and I was amazed at the kind of gathering that was there, the political heft of the gathering, and the economic confidence of the gathering, and at the same time, the celebration of Indian culture. So I think the community is actually performing very well on all the three legs or sides of a triangle, if you might say. Firstly, the amount of engagement that they have in this country. Secondly, the amount of engagement that the country of their adoption has with them. And thirdly, how much of an engagement they have with back home. I think these are the three legs, if you see. If a community sort of gets 9 out of 10 in these, then I think it's a successful community which is of benefit to both the country it's of adoption and the country of its origin. I think this particular community in the United States is, for want of a better word, a knowledge-intensive community. I think these are people who have made a name, whether it's in engineering, space, medicine, innovation, science and technology, education, you name it, and people are right up there. Again, I found, going through the list of since I was in Indiana yesterday, Purdue University has 100 faculty members of Indian origin. I went and spoke at the Harvard Business School, and I thought I was speaking at the India chapter of the Harvard Business School, because everybody was an Indian. So this is a knowledge-intensive community, and therefore the role of this community becomes exceedingly important, keeping in view on what's happening back home. If you see the Prime Minister's flagship programs, whether it is Made in India or Innovation or Digital India or Skill India, these are all in one way or the other based on the accrual and the application of knowledge. It's not simply put your money there and forget about it and you'll get an interest in 10 years you will have gained on your money. No, that's not the kind of thing that I think is being pushed. I think what is being pushed is that we have a major transformation agenda happening in India. And this major transformation has to be based on the application of knowledge and innovation. It's given that same reasoning, the Prime Minister had announced that we would be having the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in 2017, in which India and US are going to be partnering. There are several areas on which I think this knowledge intensity is absolutely necessary. I can go on and talk about different ones, but I think in particular focus, one would be, for instance, energy. Now, this is something which the country back home needs in a major way, and we need the right mix of energy. So it's a question of balancing our development needs with our green agenda. And this is something in which phenomenal work is being done here. And I think that as we move into a new administration here, I have this feeling that the energy field will become exceedingly important. There are so many areas of work, medicine, for instance. How to transform the medical landscape in India, how to transform the application of health services. There are millions of people in India who need a satisfactory health service, which is simply not availability of a hospital, but along with that, the availability of the entire infrastructure that goes behind medicine. The creation of infrastructure, whether it is the creation of roads, ports, or it is the creation of freight corridors across the country, it's all happening. And I would invite you all to remain engaged. I know all of you are politically conscious, And that is why you are here tonight. And that is why we did not want this evening to simply be something in which somebody from this direction speaks into that direction, and then everybody goes home with a slight detour through the samosas. This is something which we would like you to think about, and we would like to hear what you think about it. And that's why I think the program has been fashioned out in terms of a panel discussion as well as a Q&A. So with these few words, let me congratulate you again on this day, which is our common celebration, and let's look forward to another year of very close engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those very insightful and thought-provoking remarks. I'm sure our panelists will mull over them further during the panel discussion. Before that, we would now like to present to you the excerpts of the speech of Honorable Prime Minister of India, which he delivered at Bangalore yesterday during the Pravasi Bhartiya Divas celebrations.
It is my particular pleasure to welcome Excellency, the Prime Minister of Portugal, the Vice President of Suriname, the Honorable Ministers from Malaysia and Mauritius to the event. Their achievements, the name they have earned in their own societies and globally, are a great inspiration for all of us. It also reflects the success, glory, and enterprise of Indian diaspora the world over. There are over 30 million overseas Indians living abroad. Their footprint is all over the world, but Indians abroad are valued not just for their strength in numbers. They are respected for the contributions they make to India and to the societies and countries where they live. In foreign lands and communities across the globe, irrespective of the path they take and the goals they pursue, the Indian diaspora represents the best of Indian culture, ethos, and values. Their hard work, discipline, law-abiding, and peace-loving nature are role models for other immigrant communities abroad. Friends, for my government and for me personally, engagement with the overseas Indian community has been a key area of priority. I have met and spoken to hundreds of thousands of our brothers and sisters during my travels abroad in USA, UK, Australia, South Africa, UAE, Qatar, Singapore, Fiji, China, Japan, South Korea, Kenya, Mauritius, Seychelles, Malaysia. As a result of our sustained and systematic outreach, there is a new energy, keen desire, and strong drive among Indian diaspora to connect more extensively and deeply with India's social and economic transformation. The remittance of close to $69 billion annually by the overseas Indians makes an invaluable contribution to the Indian economy. NRIs and PIOs have made outstanding contribution to their chosen fields. Among them, there are politicians of stature, scientists of repute, outstanding doctors, brilliant educationalists, economists, musicians, famous philanthropists, journalists, bankers, engineers, and lawyers. And sorry, did I mention our well-known information technology professionals? Tomorrow, 30 overseas Indians will receive from the President the prestigious Pravasi Bhartiya Awards, which recognize contributions made by them in various fields, both in India and abroad. Friends, irrespective of their background and profession, the welfare and safety of all Indians abroad is our top priority. For this, we are strengthening the entire ecosystem of our administrative arrangements. Whether it is on loss of their passports, need for legal advice, medical assistance, shelter, or even transportation of mortal remains to India, I have directed all Indian embassies to be proactive to address problems of Indian nationals abroad. Our response to the needs of the Indian nationals overseas is defined by accessibility, sensitivity, speed, and promptness. 24/7 helplines by Indian embassies, open house meetings with Indian nationals, consular camps, Twitter Seva for passport services, and use of social media platforms for immediate access are some of the measures that we have put in place to convey a clear message that we are there for you when you need us. The security of Indian nationals abroad is of utmost importance to us. हम पासपोर्ट का कलर नहीं देखते हैं, खून का रिश्ता सोचते हैं. In institutions of distress faced by Indian nationals, we have reached out to ensure their safety, rescue, and repatriation. Our External Affairs Minister, Srimati Sushma Swaraj ji, has particularly been proactive and prompt in reaching out the distressed Indians abroad using social media. Under Operation Sankat Mochan, In July 2016, we evacuated over 150 Indian nationals from South Sudan within 48 hours. Prior to that, we evacuated several thousands of our citizens from conflict situations in Yemen in well-coordinated, smooth and swift cooperations. In the last 2 years, 2014 and 2016, we facilitated the repatriation of over 90,000 Indian nationals from nearly 54 countries. Through the Indian Community Welfare Fund, we have assisted more than 80,000 Indian nationals abroad who were in contingency situations. Our aim is that for every Indian abroad, home should never be far away. To provide the young Indian origin youth an opportunity to visit their motherland and reconnect with their Indian roots, culture, and heritage, we have expanded the government's Know India program, under the which, for the first time, 6 groups of young overseas Indians are visiting India this year. I'm very happy to know that 160 of these young overseas Indians are here today to participate in the Pravasi Bhartiya Divas. A special welcome to the young Pravasi. I hope that on returning to your respective countries, you will remain connected with us wherever you are and visit again and again India. There are some amongst you who would like to contribute in businesses and investments. Others may feel more comfortable supporting through contributions made to Swachh Bharat, Namami Gange, and others. Some others may feel motivated to spare their valuable time and efforts in volunteering in India, helping the underprivileged, or contributing to capacity building programs in various sectors. We welcome all your efforts that seek to strengthen India's partnership with the overseas Indian community. I also invite you to visit the exhibition in the Pravasi Bhartiya Divas Convention, PBD Convention, which gives you a glimpse of some of the flagship programs that we have been implementing, and see how you can partner with us. Friends, finally, I would like to say that as Indians, we have a common heritage that brings us all together. And no matter where we may be around, the globe, it is in that common bond that we are strong. और इसलिए मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, आपने जो सपने संजो के रखे हुए हैं, आपके सपने हमारे संकल्प है। और हम सब मिलकर के उन सपनों को साकार करने के लिए अगर व्यवस्था में बदलाव जरूरी हो, अगर कानून नियमों में बदलाव की जरूरत हो, साहसिक कदम उठाने की जरूरत हो, हर एक को साथ लेकर चलने के लिए जो कुछ भी करना पड़े करने की आवश्यकता हो, ये सब करते हुए मैं विश्वास से कहता हूं 21वीं सदी हिंदुस्तान की सदी है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Honorable Prime Minister's inspiring words provide us an excellent segue to our panel discussion. To help us in this task, we are honored to have amongst us a panel of eminent speakers to discuss on the subject, Indian diaspora, past trends and way forward. I request the discussants to kindly take their places on the stage. On the panel, we have Mr. Manpreet Anand. He serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs. In this capacity, he oversees US policy towards Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And he has also kindly agreed to moderate the discussion for us. Welcome, Manpreet. Next, we are honored to have with us Mr. Puneet Ahluwalia. He is the 10th District Representative on the Virginia Republican State Central Committee. He recently served on Trump Asian Pacific Advisory Committee. He professes in free market, limited government, low tax, and pro-business policies, and to create greater opportunities for South Asian and other minorities in the Virginia Republican Party. A very warm welcome to you, Puneet. Also gracing the panel, we have with us Ms. Sonal Shah. Ms. Shah is an economist and entrepreneur. From April 2009 to August 2011, she served as the director of the Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation in the White House. Shah is the founding executive director of the Beek Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University. A very warm welcome, Sonal. Thank you. And last but not the least, we have also on the panel Ms. Suhag Shukla, Esquire, Executive Director and Legal Counsel. She is a co-founder of Hindu American Foundation. She is actively involved with Chinmaya Mission and serves on the board of the Bhutanese American Organization of Philadelphia. A very warm welcome to you. The panel discussion will be followed by a Q&A session. For this, we have colleagues with mics standing on either side. We have one on this side and one on the other side. To ask a question, you are requested to raise your hand so that the mic is brought for you, and please do identify yourself before putting the question. I now hand over to Manpreet to conduct the panel discussion.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Ambassador Sarnath, for opening up the embassy for this important celebration and day. Really looking forward to this discussion on this special day. You know, I think what we're planning on doing is allowing each of the distinguished panelists here to open up with a few minutes of remarks, but we really want to have a lot of engagement with everybody that's joined here today. So we'll try to quickly move to the Q&A, if that's okay with everybody. But I thought I would just start off by remarking upon a little bit of the accomplishments of the diaspora here in the United States. There has been a long tradition and a long history of Indian Americans' accomplishments in a variety of fields. And I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking through that. But first start with a really special award that the ambassador mentioned and Prime Minister Modi mentioned in that video. And that's the Pravasi Bhartiya Divas Award, which was awarded to 30 individuals from around the world. But one in particular was my friend, colleague, and boss, at least for the next couple of weeks, Nisha Desai Biswal. And just a congratulations to her. And she spoke on behalf of the 30 recipients earlier today in Bangalore. Somebody who's really, there's really no one more deserving than Nisha for this award. She has been a tireless champion of the US-India relationship And for a good reason, because it's based on the belief that the people-to-people ties that we have between the United States and India really form the foundation and the driver for the relationship as a whole. And the approach and the way that she takes to her task actually typifies what so many Indian Americans do in their daily lives. And I wanted to speak just a little bit about that because it's a mentality that really is rooted from an immigrant mentality. And the Indian American population here and the ethos is really rooted in migration. Over the last 150 so odd years, you've had a tremendous amount of migration to the United States. And now you have somewhere between 3 and 4 million Indian Americans here. And though many of them didn't bring a lot with them, they brought hope. They brought determination. They brought grit. They brought hard work to everything that they do, which is why you see so many in every facet of society being successful. And if I were to just take out just a few examples, we don't have time to go through all of them, but just a few examples. Kalpana Chawla, the first Indian American astronaut, she came here in 1982 to pursue higher education. Vivek Murthy, the first Indian American Surgeon General, and he served obviously in the Obama administration. He's of course not the only prominent Indian American doctor that you can think of, but certainly one of high regard. Moving from the sciences into literature, almost a century ago, you had Dan Gopal Mukherjee, who won prestigious awards because of his work in children's literature. Fast forward to today, Jhumpa Lahiri, who also won an award. She won an award, the National Medal for Arts and Humanities, presented to her by President Obama. Move across the coast to Hollywood. You have really well-known artists and directors like M. Night Shyamalan. You have comedians and TV personalities like Mindy Kaling or Aziz Ansari or Kal Penn, who also made his way into the White House, perhaps Sonal when you were serving there. But perhaps, and this is probably my own bias, where I see the most energy and where I see a lot of positive trajectory is in the realm of politics and public service. The ambassador before mentioned the members of Congress and the prominence by which so many people are taking what is now lovingly be called the Fab Five. The 4 members in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senator, all of who are of Indian origin. But the first Indian American member of Congress was actually nearly 60 years ago with Dalip Singh Sandh. And I think he was actually the first Asian American, not just Indian American, in Congress. Even as we speak, in a time of transition, we see Governor Nikki Haley being nominated to be the next ambassador from the United States to the UN. She would be the first Indian American to serve in a cabinet role. The list goes on and on. I should mention my friend and former colleague Raj Shah, who was administrator of USAID just recently, has now been named head of Rockefeller Foundation. So, and of course, how can I forget Rich Verma, our ambassador to India itself. So I think there are so many notable personalities. They span so many different realms of society, and it's increasingly apparent that even though our two nations will geographically stay quite far apart, in every other way we are moving closer together, and in large part that is due to the Indian American community. And I think it's because fundamentally we have things in common. We all respect personal liberties. We have tolerance and appreciation for diversity. We are 2 big democracies that value multi-religious, multicultural, multilingual, and multi-ethnic societies. And for that reason, I think the U.S.-India relationship is on an ascendant path, and I think It will continue to do so as long as there's a strong and vibrant Indian American community. We've tried hard in this administration to continue to rely upon that community to help do our work and bring the relationship to newer heights. I have no doubt in my mind that that will continue into the next administration as well. But it'll need all of your help and guidance. It'll need the Indian American community behind that. Let me stop there and invite some of my other panelists to share some of their thoughts and comments before we open it up. And I thought I would start, if it's okay, Sahag, with you to share some of your thoughts.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's an honor to be here. And this is a broad topic, so I'm going to make some broad generalizations. So there's my caveat. But I couldn't agree more with the Prime Minister that the diaspora is one of India's greatest assets. From surveys pinning us as the most educated, the wealthiest, from spelling bee champs to CEOs, we've seen a tremendous amount of individual success. But where I see the Indian American community's unsung heroes, it's in community organizations. We saw the power of our community in 2 rock star receptions for the Prime Minister at Madison Square Garden and the SAP Center in San Jose. And that should give us just a taste of what we can accomplish if we're able to come together. And that was such a good demonstration of the diaspora working with the government to increase understanding, to show the importance and the priority that we give as a community to a strategic U.S.-India partnership, as well as the contributions of Indians to the United States. And we saw with receptions occurring across the diaspora of how Indians have succeeded nearly in every country that they go to. But in this very positive story, I think that there's also opportunity to improve. We should never rest on our laurels. And part of that motivation should come from the fact that while we have a constant flow of immigrants coming to the United States from India, and so that connection will be there, what are we doing to ensure that the next generation? I am the child of immigrants, and I have a deep and imbibing love for India. But what's to say that my children, who are now 3rd generation, how are they going to remain connected to India? And that's where the community organizations come in. Because when they first started coming in large numbers in the late 50s and 60s and 70s and onwards, they saw value in our culture, in our language, in our ethos, and in seeing that value, they invested tirelessly in creating organizations that would promote, not just promote, but preserve all of these cultural inheritances that bind us all together. But there's room for improvement in those community organizations. We've done so much on a volunteer basis, but professionalism is necessary. If we are able to create career tracks for a 2nd and 3rd generation to serve the community through organizations that are providing social services, that are providing advocacy, that are providing a political voice, a stronger Indian American community can only lead to a stronger U.S.-India strategic partnership and a continued engagement from one generation to the next to the next. I looked at some statistics. About 1/3 of the population of Indian Americans are born and raised here. So that's going to continue to change. How many people are able to immigrate from India to the United States? That can also fluctuate. So we really need to, in my opinion, look at the long game to see where are the 2nd and 3rd generation going to find opportunities to serve here as well as in India in order to keep this people-to-people connection going. One of the areas that I also feel that we need to invest in, and I don't want to go too much into detail in all of what I mean by professionalizing. Obviously, going from volunteer to having full-time staff is an important step. If you look at other communities that have succeeded in improving the understanding of the community, because as much as we have succeeded, there are a number of misunderstandings about our culture, about our heritage. You just need to open up pages of some mainstream media to see that sometimes the views and presentations of India are not as positive as we may see them. So how are we going to improve that? There are areas like the media. We are seeing great numbers coming into policy, but encouraging our young people to pursue fields like the humanities, history, policy that may not be as rewarding financially as, say, being an entrepreneur, being a doctor, being a lawyer, being an engineer, but still have great impact. So looking for opportunities for our community to invest in the future in that way. And with that, I'll just pass on, because I'm sure we want to share a lot and make this engaging. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Doc. I think you brought up some really important points, especially about the role of second and third generation Indians and also being able to organize, perhaps, with civil society. I know that, Puneet, you spend a lot of time at a grassroots level engaging a lot of people. Maybe you can share some of your thoughts about that and other things that you may have.
Good evening, everyone. Ambassador Serna, thank you for having us. DC Ms. Sandhu, thank you, Mr. G. Community leaders, I see so many of them because I've followed their path. And then, of course, the impressionable press and my teammates here. I go back to the fundamental, the teachings, the heritage we have, which is our Janam Bhumi and Karam Bhumi. We come from a great land which has given us so much integrity and so much value that we bring it to this nation, in this country, which becomes our Karam Bhumi. And that what inspires and aspires us to reach the new heights. At the same time, we are also rooted. You know, we all talk about our roots. Who are we? Where have we come from? Our roots are India, but our tree is in this country. And our roots cannot be strong, and our tree cannot be strong if the roots are not strong. So it's very important for the community to realize, not only for US-India relationship, but for our own existence in this country or any foreign land we are in, that you have to make the roots strong. You have to water the roots. And fortunately, our roots go through an embassy, which is very proactive, very open to listening. And that's very key for us to do that. And I'm going to also go into another aspect, is that we all are ambassadors of our own heritage and our own community. Whatever religion, faith, belief system we come from, we are all ambassadors of that. And when most people from the mainstream look at us, they just see us as one, and they say, who are you? I'm a Sikh, but no, you're Indian. Or you're a Hindu, no, you're Indian. Basically, that's our brand. Our brand is the secularism, the democracy, the great spiritual cradle that has inspired millions and over millions of years. That's the great land we all come from. Hence the reason, as ambassadors of our community, I also look at us as we are also very important to participate in the land we've adopted. As my friend said, I've been involved in the grassroots for 17 years, and my brand is India. My focus is to organize my community to politically participate. Because if we don't have a political participation, all the intellectual capital we have built, the financial wealth we have hoarded, the nice big houses we have built and the Mercedes we drive, can be wiped out with one stroke. So political participation is very key, because that's very, very important. Because guess what? Success also has a big target behind it. And we are a very effective, successful community. And people who know us see us as that. Hence the reason, at the same time, our enemies or people who are jealous of our success are also connivingly trying to put us down. I see that on a daily basis. So that's very important, as a community, to unite together. That's my other request. I may have been wandering off to this conversation. So this is important for not only the Indian community, but also the US-India relationship, because that's where the next step we are going to go into. The next step of US-India, I'm very confident, I can guarantee you this, we will see strong US-India relations. And I'll give you the reason why. Because we are a natural partner. But that doesn't mean that we just, as she said, we should sit on a laurel. No, we should not. We should be proactive, not reactive. Because guess what? The IT success which has happened, thanks to the Prime Minister also pointing that out, is also seen as a negative for us. So that's the reason why I feel it's more important that we're not perceived as just takers, but we have to give. And then when I say give, contribute. When we drive a nice car, don't we all get an insurance? So please contribute by participating in local, national, political game plan. Because if we don't participate, we're only seen as takers. And hence the reason why I urge my community to work together. Guess what? We all keep saying 3.4 million. We're just 1 million citizens who really vote. And we're all dispersed all over the United States. But in key battleground states where we matter, let's unite and effectively work. So I want to go quickly into the US-India relationship. We have a great opportunity as a community, as a country we hail from, to strengthen these ties. It's all up to us how we do that. So we work closely with the embassy. We work closely with our leadership of this nation, thanks to your service in the nation, thanks to you working in the White House. We have to take the political capital, because that's the biggest footprint we can have. Using the political capital, we need to start actively participating. And then the other important thing I want to say, let's support one of our own always. In fact, thank you for running a great organization. Please support organizations which are credible, which are helping to enhance the footprint of our brand and our identity. That's very important. We don't invest in our own. The next thing we want to do is, yaar, wo kaise upar chala gaya? No, it doesn't really matter. I'm very proud there are more Indians available now to be participating, because that strengthens my hand. Lastly, we're having a great gala for Ambassador, for Trump, President-elect and Pence. I've seen the Chinese community throwing money at me because I'm the finance chair, because they really want to, because they realize they are on a defensive and they want to aggressively participate. Please, my friends, show up, act, participate, contribute. That's how they know we stand. And that's the success of our community. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. I think lots of calls to action there, so I hope everybody was taking good notes. Sonal, can I turn to you to maybe provide a little bit of capstone, some of your own thoughts also on this topic?
Sure. First, Ambassador, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting us. Thank you for hosting this event, because it's funny, in Pravasi Bhartiya Divas we talk about it, but it's, we don't always talk about it amongst ourselves, which is nice to do. I also want to thank the community. I am a product of the community. I came here when I came to the United States when I was 4. And it is thanks to much of all of the work that you all have done that we get to benefit in standing strong on our heritage. You spent many years building institutions that we didn't have to build, whether it's the community organizations, whether it's the temples, whether it's the gurdwaras, whether it's any institutions that you have built in this country. Those of us that are not necessarily born here, but grew up when we were young, we have benefited from, and the strength of our heritage is through all of the work that you have done. So thank you. And that is underestimated sometimes how important that is, but how many of us benefit and use those institutions as our kids get bigger. Those are very important. So thank you for everything and the work that you have put in. It's been a lot of work. And I see it from my parents, I see it from my uncles and aunts, and I see it from all of you, so thank you for that. I think, you've heard many calls to action here. As a diaspora, we are evolving. We came here to build institutions. When I first came, when my parents first came, many of you came, when you saw an Indian in a store, you showed up. You went to talk to them, you went to see them, you went to say hello to them, and that was very important, right? That was not something that you have to do today, but at that time, if you first moved to Washington or to Maryland or to Virginia, you didn't know another Indian, but when you saw one, you said hello, and you built these institutions. So I think we're evolving. We've gone from preserving our culture, how do we maintain our culture, how do we help India, to also growing as a community and who are we and what do we become. And that's important, and that's an important part of who we are. But we're also changing, and India is changing, right? 20 years ago, nobody wanted to go live in India. 20 years later, my cousins are moving to India. because they want to go work in India. That's a different culture. It's a different culture change in our own community. We see India as a strong partner, not just India as a place we came from. And that, Puneet, as you were talking, the ties are so important because that relationship with India is changing, which is amazing. And we started an organization 15 years ago now called India Corps, just to get Indians, people of second generation, third generation that wanted to know their heritage to go back. We closed that organization 15 years later because we realized how many people were going back on their own. They didn't need an organization to help them. They were doing it on their own. So the times have changed. And I think what we have the ability to do is really think about how we're going to contribute in multiple realms separately, right? One is how do we contribute not just to India, but how do we also contribute that same knowledge and everything we've learned to the United States? Everything that we all hold so precious about India matters here. How we treat people. How do you take care of others? How do you build community? How do you take care of community? Look around you, it matters, right? The same culture matters here. So how do you apply those same skill sets to the United States? And how do we build that community, not just for the Indians in the United States, but for everybody to see that there is more that the culture of India contributes, not just to India, but also to the world. And the world that we live in is the one in the United States. The second is, we're a financially successful community. We've done quite well for ourselves, and many thanks to you all, and much of it from savings, actually, not just from, IPOs, but actually doing well and saving money. But we've done well, and we've given to local organizations in India. But how do we think bigger than that? Right? The ambassador mentioned, and the prime minister mentioned, when you look at energy and all of these things that we want to do in India, the infrastructure, all of the big things that we want to do in India, it takes financial expertise, and many of you have it. How would you contribute differently, and how can we contribute differently to India that is not just money to nonprofit organizations, but thinking about, could you build financial structures that help build infrastructure? Could you help build financial structures that help build new energy sources in India? What does that look like? I don't know the answer, but I know that we're smart enough to figure it out. If we can build a solar panel and get to the moon, we certainly can figure out a new financial structure. That's much easier than getting to the moon. So there's a lot we can put to the table that's not just one or the other. It's not just donating back to India, but it's also thinking about how do we donate differently? And how do we think differently about that? And then the final idea I want to put on the table in the conversation is on the political. I hope that you will let more of your children run for office, to participate in local elections, not just vote, but ask them to run. Have people like Puneet, have people like Manpreet go into government, go into different places, because when you run, you change. And people see you differently. So I put these three ideas because this is our diaspora exchange. It's not just about us in India, but it's how we represent India in the United States, as much as India takes care of us in India. So thank you.
No, great points. Thank you, Sonal. And great questions. And so with that, I think we want to try to have more of an exchange with everybody here. I think the idea is that we'll take 2 or 3 questions or comments together and then have various folks up here respond to it. Please do keep your comments or questions brief so that we have time to go through the rest. And I think, Satish, are you going to facilitate that? Okay.
Thank you. The question is, India's value lies in the villages. Our entire culture, irrespective of our language, religion, places that we all come from, but the value-based education and economics and culture all originates from the villages. As per the statistics Ambassador has given, there are 30 million Indians, or the Prime Minister's speech, 30 million Indians all across the globe. But there are 7 million villages in India. If you divide the diaspora to the ratio of villages, it is 4 NRIs or PIOs versus 1 village. Can the ambassador suggest to our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Bhai that 4 NRIs must look into 1 village each, which will address all the issues that 4 panelists have just mentioned. And we are economically strong, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, we ride. But let that economic ego doesn't strike your opinion. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for a wonderful evening, Mr. Ambassador and the panelists. Now, there is an institutional lack of connection between the people of India and the Indians abroad. The Germans were the first to recognize this and created the Goethe Institutes. And the Chinese are the most recent to realize this and have created the Confucian Institutes. Perhaps it's time for New Delhi to look at such an institutional connection that can favor both the government, the people of India, the Indians overseas, and the host countries. Thank you.
Yeah, Ambassador Kapoor.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for this very well thought out evening. And thank you to all the panelists for the great points you have raised. I'm Pradeep Kapoor. I've been a Foreign Service Officer for India. I currently teach at the University of Maryland. I'm also from the IIT Delhi, so I understand the aspects of the diaspora a little bit here. What I want to ask you is, one hears about the possibility of the India-US dialogue becoming the defining partnership for the 21st century. Now, what are the things which will help both the countries to understand each other better in terms of the cultural points, cultural aspects, cultural differences which they have? And how can the diaspora play a role in that? And how can this partnership work towards a better future, a better world? And the second aspect is the PBD celebrations in India. What would interest you or energize you as panelists to bring in greater energy, greater traction for the future, if you were to think about how to make it better and involve more Indians? Thank you.
Thank you all. So I think we heard quite a few different points in there, and I'm going to ask each of our panelists to respond. I think the ambassador was convoked on all of them. Even though he's not a panelist, it shows how his popularity, I think, in this. And so if he wishes to opine, we'll certainly pass the mic. But Puneet, maybe I can start with you with a question that involved a Republic Day plug, but also was asking about diaspora engagement in rural areas.
Sir, with due respect, I am a believer of free will. We all have our calling, we all have our faith. We should be directed our energy to what we believe in and strongly. Hence the reason I can't impose anybody to do or take on a village. If you feel that you have your ties to the village and that's what matters to you, you should do it. That's what I look at that way. At the same time, there's a lot of work to be done here. Before I go take care of my villages or my friends in India, I'd rather take care of things here, which is very important because it's an ongoing work. It's a tough work. Please, when I tell you and I share with you, our administration in the United States think in 2 years and 4 years and 8-year terms. Start thinking that. As soon as an election is over, we're thinking of the next election. You think we've just thought, we all not even celebrated on the 20th. We're already thinking of the next election and the election after. That's how we should start thinking as a community. So it's a great noble work. So I appreciate taking on your cause, free will. The other thing was, Rajeshji, I can only expect a brilliant question from you. I completely agree with you. There's a lack of disconnect of how Washington, the institution, works in the United States. It's very different. The play is very different. What you see is very different. It's a three-dimensional chess being played at the same time. And I completely agree. And I have found Institute of World Politics, which is basically in Washington on the 16th Street, and I work very closely with them, is that they train your diplomats or the international diplomats or the students to understand how the mindset of we Americans work in the mainstream. And that's very important. Once we understand how my country thinks, it'll be very easy for us to know how the communication, how the business is going to work, how the transaction is going to work. And Kapoor Saab, thank you for your service as a great Rajdoot to Bharat. I look at this new administration is very passionate and very nationalist. So we have to start thinking in the nationalist tone, and that's when on my many occasions I've said, be part of the president's nationalist agenda. And that goes for any business aspect. And that also is to be, how can we be more transactional? Let's get past the democracy, the greatest and the oldest democracy. Now let's say, what is India looking to get from the United States, and what can the United States help India in furthering its influence in Asia? And that's when I start talking about is, let's not talk about, my friend and I, we coined a term called US Indo-Pacific strategy. It's not Asia-Pacific strategy. Let's start using US Indo-Pacific. It's going to be US-India Afghanistan policy, US-India Sri Lanka policy. That's how we start to change the dialogue and the dynamic. At the same time, where is India going to go with the United States in terms of tangible? In the end, how do we all make money? I'm sorry to say, but we are Republicans. Look at dollar and cents. How do we get that? That's the direction if we start thinking as a community, which we do. We're on the right path.
Thanks, Puneet. Sonal, I'm going to ask you to maybe comment on a couple of these questions, particularly given your experience with IndyCorps, this question around institutional frameworks to help connect people to people. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I thought that was a great question in terms of how do you think long-term in building an institution that connects culture and not just going back to visit your family. And how do you think about building a cultural institute that allows for that culture to happen? I think it's worth actually learning from the different institutes that have been created and what's the future of where it needs to go. Too often we create institutions that look exactly like what looked 50 years ago when the world is moving 50 years ahead. So I think if we think about those cultural institutions, it's also good to remember that before it was much harder to travel back and forth. How many of you go to India once a year? How many of your family members go to India once a year? Right, it's changing. No longer are you saying, oh, I have to wait 5 years before I can go to India. You can get on an airplane and go to India. And actually, we can afford to do it. That's the difference. So I think when we think about building those cultural institutions, I would think about how we want to build them and what those institutions look like. But don't necessarily build what was built in 1950 for today, because we're not in 1950. So that's one comment I would make. And then the second, Ambassador, I thought you asked a great question. I think what's interesting in the world that we're living in is, I just look at India's population. 40% of India's population, 60%, right? 60% is under the age of 40? 65% of the population is under the age of 40. 35. Under 35 even, let's just add that, right? 65% of the population is under the age of 35. To attract that next generation of people that want to come to Pravasi Bhartiya Divas, it's challenging them to create a vision for India at PBD and showing up to create that vision with you. So what is that next generation of people like me or people who are younger than me that want to be a part of building a new world that looks different, that solves problems? And say, let's say I'll just give you an example. I don't have a view on what the right answers are. How do we build a new agricultural economy in India? If you were to ask young people from here and the young people from there to challenge that, you might get some really interesting ideas. What does the energy future of India look like? And how do you bring the finance folks and the technology folks to the table to come up with that idea? There is a real opportunity to challenge a group of people that want to come to India to do something like that. And they will come and stay for 10 years if you challenge them. But if you say, I'm going to tell you how to do it, they're not going to show up. if you challenge them to come up with those ideas and support them, they will show up and they will stay because they want to be a part of it. And I'll give you an example of a country that has done it, which is actually quite interesting, is Chile. They started a whole program called Startup Chile, and it's, right, yeah, exactly, that's right. And you've seen how many people are going there, not just of Chilean descent, but others who want to be a part of that solution. So I think what you have is an ability to do something like that. And there's a huge opportunity, because given where the population of India is, you have an opportunity to inspire them.
The one word, or two words that kind of came to my head with a couple of the questions is cultural competency. And Puneet, you hit upon this. And I see a role for the Indian American community to work with the embassy in bridging that gap, because we do straddle two cultures. My accent, I mean, it gives it away. When I go to India, people immediately know that I'm an American. And then there's subtleties in how a deal is made, how invites are sent. And we learned a lot of that. I think Sunit knows, where is he? I think he's here. When we were working on the reception for the Prime Minister, that even between the community and the embassy, we were hitting sometimes some of those cultural differences. So I think that those types of opportunities where we can come together, where we're working on whatever it might be a community celebration, it might be policy oriented, but where the government of India can turn to the diaspora, because we do eat, breathe, and live as Americans. And so we can be part of that cultural competency from that end. As far as your question on culture, I think that some of the disconnect between who we think we are and what we think informs our values and our traditions and our practices, the misrepresentation and misportrayal starts as early as 6th grade. If you look at how India and the religions of India are portrayed in textbooks, it freeze frames India probably to maybe the 1920s at best. So people understand India to be caste cows and karma, or caste cows and sati, or caste cows and dowry. And that is the first introduction to Americans at large. And then it might be bolstered by what you see in the media. So it's incumbent upon all of us as community members to educate our neighbors, support those institutions that are trying to educate people and provide a more, and I'm not saying a whitewashed version either, but at least an accurate, a nuanced, and a balanced, and a complex picture of what India is and what it is to be Indian. And I think all of that, of us coming together and working on the narrative or our story, and a story that we tell, not one that's been told by the British and it's still tainting us, but one that we tell. And that is going to take us in the right direction.
Do we have time for another round?
We can, provided the questions are brief and there are no comments made. We'll have another few questions.
I have just an observation. We were talking about the rural education. What it is, if every Indian who is settled here just contribute $1 multiplied by 365, they can educate in every village poor girls who could not finish their studies. And imagine, Ambassador Sarnaji said 3.5 million are here, and that you multiply that by $1 each day, and then could produce the entire thing. So that was my observation, to uplift the education, ladki bachao, ladki padhao.
One day.
Namasarvebhyah sarvesham Pravasi Bhartiya Divasya Subhashayah. I just started studying Sanskritam 3 years ago, so I just wanted to show off that. Anyway, my quick question is, as Manpreet Singh ji, as you're in the US administration, and also similar question to Sarang ji in the Indian administration, as you are doing your jobs, is there anything you feel the Indian diaspora could have done to make your job better or contribute better? So I wanted to ask that from that perspective. And same question, if Ambassador also can answer.
Yeah.
I have 3 very brief questions, directed ones. One is we have about 100,000 students from India. They go to different universities and they move around sometimes. from university to university, another city. I think the embassy should have a live database, current database for their security. Some of them do get assaulted, go unreported, and we don't know nothing about it. We hear from different sources. That's number one. Number two, would the ambassador Saab make an official announcement about the 1,000 rupees return date has been extended, we heard, till June. If that is true, you can tell us. Third one is very simple. When are we going to see a direct flight from Air India, from Washington to India? That's it. Thank you.
You can try your best to answer those questions.
So
Thank you.
So I'll make a quick comment because I think there are a couple of questions that I can respond to there, and then I see Ambassador Sarna writing some notes, so we may actually give him a mic in a minute. Responding to the first comment or observation about giving, and that's really what it boils down to, and the other question about what is it that the diaspora could have done. Not in this current role, but my previous role at USAID, one of the things that we tried to do was leverage the great affluence and interest of the Indian American community in actually contributing to India's development. Throughout kind of my time in development and foreign assistance, when you talked about diaspora giving, it was always thought about in a very philanthropic way. And what that promoted was good feelings, but not always good impact. And what I mean by that is, and this might be true of some of your families as well, when my family, as an Indian American family, decided that they wanted to give back in some way to India, they would write a check. And they'd probably write a check to the school in the village that they grew up in or something along those lines. Not knowing whether children actually attended that school, what kind of education they got, what those children got to do after that particular primary education, whether there were any secondary education facilities. So it was not strategic. It was ad hoc at best. And so one of the things that we tried to do at AID was say, listen, we know there's a great deal of enthusiasm. Why don't we work with you to not give, but invest? How can you invest in India? So there's an automatic profit motivation where you expect results, you expect a return on your investment, but you also expect a social return. That money is going to be invested in institutions, or whether it be health or education or in financial inclusion or women's empowerment or entrepreneurship, that you expect there to be a social return to that investment. And that does a couple of things. It gets people engaged actively. It makes sure that their response to this is not just passive, but they're constantly monitoring how things are going. And it helps to scale, because the biggest issue in India is scale. The dollars that even a big government like US government can provide in foreign assistance is just a drop in the bucket compared to the challenges that are out there. So what you want to do is actually invest in models that you can then scale up, right? And so I think if I were to ask or think about what are one of the areas which I would like the diaspora to get more involved, and I mean the broader diaspora, not just the high net worth individuals who can cut $10 million checks, but the broader diaspora, it would be in this area. It would be in the social impact investing area, because I think we have both the interest, the enthusiasm, as well as the affluence to really make a big difference. So with that, unless there are other panelists, you want to make a comment?
If we all Indians gave $1 to credible organizations, nationalist organizations, truly believing in US-India relationship and furthering the cause of the Indians, Indian Americans in the United States, look at Hindu American Foundation. If that organization becomes a $3.5 million organization, just by $1, it enhances the footprint. And we create other organizations. We create 3 or 4, not many, just 2 or 3. Give $1 each a year. We can make a very large positive impact. I'm not going to call it a noise. A very good Indian music, which is going to be heard all over, be it in the area of culture, social, politics, business, whatever it is. Folks, Washington is run by dollars and cents. And if you don't do that, you're just making noise. And then the other question was, I think that's a great idea if we have a database of all Indian young boys who are here, because these are the future of, oh, girls, I'm so sorry. I have 2 girls, okay. So if we have the database, it's only going to help to, this is the investment of young Indian Americans understanding how the system works. In fact, Sohag said, the concept of the culture, understanding of the US culture, the mainstream, once these young kids understand that, they're a great asset to both United States and to India. There was a very good idea, which you said is the contribution of the diaspora. It's very important. You know, I'm going to say, I'm not being cynical here. Having 4 or 5 congressmen, how many African American congressmen are there? About 40, 60 of them? Have they done anything for the African American community? No, trust me, go to Washington, D.C., you can see it. You live in it. How many Hispanic congressmen are there, and even senators? What have they done for Central America and South America? They're still deplorable places. Folks, these people only care about their constituencies. Nothing gives them more power to them. I want more of them. The people who really make the strength, all of you. And all of you, if you contribute and vote and participate, and as she said, have your kids go into politics, but first be a dog catcher. Just don't be a congressman. Learn to be a dog catcher. Learn to be part of your executive committees of leadership in counties. Then you know how it works. That's how you win. Anyway.
Thanks, Maneet. Couple of final comments and, from the ladies on the panel.
I just wanted to piggyback on the database question. One thing, I'm thinking back to when my father came to this country. There was, I mean, the numbers are clearly so much larger. So there were smaller groups coming, but they all went through some sort of etiquette training and some sort of transition before they came to the United States. When I was active with our college Indian Student Association, we made sure that we made an outreach to those students who are coming from India. So there's, in addition to a database, I think we need to also get, and that again bridges that gap between 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation Indian Americans who are still getting involved in their college campuses and organizations and bridging that gap with those students who might be coming. I think we also need a database of community organizations, not an umbrella organization. I don't know how many times someone says, let's make an umbrella organization. That is the last thing we need, because we're just as strong individually. Because if the boat sinks, do we all want to be on one boat? So, but a database of organizations so that we know, there's one that the Pluralism Project at Harvard put together of temples, but one of all the linguistic-based, Gujarati Samaj, Bengali Association, Tamil Sangam, all of those. Then there's literary societies. And that sort of thing, I think, could really empower our community and also provide the embassy some good statistics and increase our footprint as Americans, because you know, our foundation has an advocacy day every year in Washington, D.C., where we take community members to offices on the Hill, and we have 1 or 2 priorities, legislative priorities, that we get and encourage community members to make an ask. Don't be satisfied with just a picture with a congressman, because that's going to gather dust on a wall. But you should have a legislative priority. It might be dealing with your trade. It might be dealing with human rights, civil rights, or the U.S.-India partnership. But go in and ask for it. So if you're writing a check, on the memo, you should already be thinking, what's my ask going to be? And we don't ask. We're satisfied with pictures. So we need to get beyond that mentality. But what we did is, in order for the congressman to listen to us, we did our own research to say, oh, by the way, in your district, you have 2 temples, 1 gurudwara, and this many linguistic organizations. But if that sort of data is available for all of us to benefit from, I think that would be a tremendous asset.
Thank you. Sonal, you want to round it out here?
I just want to say, first of all, thank you to the embassy for hosting this conversation. And I think we need to have more of these conversations about what we do And let's not end it at coming to the embassy and having this conversation, but actually doing something with it, because I think our power is in our ability to act, not in our ability to talk. And so if we can do actions together, it would be great, and I really look forward to it. So thank you for hosting this conversation and for pushing us.
And now it falls upon me to express a sincere thank you and gratitude to Manpreet, Sonal, Puneet, and Suhag for this very remarkably varied discussion. I felt that you brought such varied perspectives to the discussion, from administration to politics to the community connection, and also to thank this lovely audience for this very energetic and spontaneous participation in the discussion. And it's my sincere hope that this will just be the beginning, and we will continue this conversation over samosas, as one of the panelists rightly put, and further outside the embassy in your day-to-day life in all the domains that you work in. So if you may please join us now for refreshments, it's on the right-hand side. Thank you. And before that, we will also hand over flowers from Ambassador to the panelists.